All right, so let's jump into another deep dive. And today we are going to be talking about GSK's recent acquisition of IDRx. We're going to try to figure out why GSK made this billion-dollar bet, what it could mean for the future of cancer treatment. This is something that might be interesting to you if you're, following the stock market or intrigued by cancer research, or if you're just curious about how these big business moves actually impact the world of medicine.
Yeah, this is a really smart move for GSK, especially when you consider their history. They've been trying to sort of like reestablish themselves in the oncology field ever since they sold their cancer assets to Novartis. That was almost a decade ago. So, this acquisition, it's really just one piece of a larger strategy that GSK is using to make a comeback.
It's interesting how they're going about it too, right? They're not just developing new drugs from scratch, but
Yeah.
they're being very strategic, right? They're acquiring companies, they're partnering with others. Like they've formed all these partnerships in China for antibody drug conjugates. So it's a pretty multifaceted approach.
It really is. And in the case of IDRx, I think it's pretty clear that GSK sees like significant potential there. IDRx specializes in targeted cancer therapies, particularly for rare cancers. And, just last year, IDRx was valued at $430 million. And now GSK is coming in and they're willing to pay more than double that amount. And that speaks volumes about what they believe IDRx can bring to the table.
Yeah. I mean, that's a massive jump in valuation in a really short amount of time. So what is it about IDRx that has GSK so eager to acquire them? Is it their lead product candidate, IDRx-42?
Yeah, I mean, IDRx-42 is definitely a key factor here. It's designed to target a specific protein. It's called KIT. And this protein is also mutated in a rare cancer called gastrointestinal stromal tumor, or GIST. What's really intriguing about IDRx-42 is its approach. So, targeted therapies are designed to go after specific cancer cells. It's like, think of it like a magic bullet, right?
Yeah.
But IDRx-42, it takes this a step further.
Okay, tell me more about that. What makes IDRx-42's approach so unique?
Well, it's designed to tackle not just the initial mutations that drive the cancer, but also the resistance mutations that often develop over time. You see, these resistance mutations, they can actually make existing treatments less effective. So a drug that can overcome them would be a pretty significant advancement.
Makes sense. So it's like hitting the cancer from multiple angles in a way.
Precisely. And, the early clinical trial data is certainly promising. We're seeing like a 43% objective response rate in patients who received IDRx-42 as a second-line treatment. And that's pretty significant, especially in a cancer like GIST, which can be really challenging to treat.
So what does that 43% response rate actually tell us? Like, what should we be reading into these early results?
Well, it suggests that IDRx-42 could offer a more durable response, meaning it could keep the cancer under control for a longer period of time, especially adhere to existing treatments. But of course, we need larger and longer term studies to really confirm this. But the initial results are definitely encouraging.
It sounds like GSK is banking on IDRx-42 being a game changer. So how does this acquisition actually fit into their overall strategy? What are they hoping to gain?
Well, this acquisition really strengthens their oncology pipeline. They're getting a late-stage drug candidate that has blockbuster potential. They also get to tap into the rare cancer market, which has a lot of growth potential and, less competition compared to more common cancers. Additionally, they gain expertise in targeted therapies, which is an area where they've kind of lagged behind some competitors.
So it's not just about this one drug, it's about positioning themselves strategically within the larger oncology market.
Absolutely. And of course, there's the financial aspect as well. If IDRx-42 gets approved, it could generate substantial revenue for GSK.
Right. But it's not all about the bottom line for GSK, right? I mean, if IDRx-42 actually lives up to its potential, it could have a significant impact on patients with GC.
Absolutely. It could mean new hope for those who haven't responded to other treatments. It could mean, a longer, healthier life.
Let's shift gears a little bit and talk about the broader context here. You mentioned this rare cancer market. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Sure. So the rare cancer market is a rapidly growing segment of the oncology industry. And while individually these cancers might affect a relatively small number of people, collectively, they represent a significant patient population. And because there are fewer treatment options available, the need for new and effective therapies is really high.
And this need translates into a pretty lucrative market for pharmaceutical companies.
It does. The pricing of rare cancer drugs is often high, and there is less competition, which makes it an attractive area for investment.
So GSK's acquisition of IDRx is a pretty smart business move on a few levels. They gain this promising new drug, they enter a lucrative market, and they strengthen their overall position in the oncology field.
Exactly. But let's not forget that the ultimate goal here is to actually improve the lives of patients. And the development of new therapies like IDRx-42 gives us reason to be hopeful.
Yeah, it's a good reminder that amidst all the financial maneuvering and strategic positioning, there are real people whose lives are being impacted by these developments.
Precisely. And it really underscores the importance of responsible development and pricing of these potentially life-saving therapies.
So we've covered a lot of ground here, but we've really only just scratched the surface. So let's dive a little deeper into the science behind IDRx-42 and explore what makes it so unique.
So we were just talking about how IDRx-22 has this potential to be, a game changer for GIST patients. But to really grasp its significance, I think we need to kind of understand the intricacies of how this cancer actually develops.
Yeah, okay, let's unpack that. You mentioned that GIST is often driven by mutations in a gene called KITE. So what exactly does this gene do, and how do these mutations actually contribute to the development of cancer?
All right, so the KIT gene, it provides instructions for making the KIT protein, and this protein plays a really critical role in cell growth and signaling. You can think of it like a carefully orchestrated communication system that tells cells when to grow and divide.
So it's like a set of instructions, and when there's a typo in those instructions, things can go wrong.
That's a great analogy. Yeah, so in the case of GIs, about 80% of cases actually involve mutations in this KIT gene. And these mutations, they lead to the production of an overactive KIT protein. It's like the protein gets stuck in the on position, constantly sending signals that tell the cells to grow and divide, even when they shouldn't.
And this uncontrolled growth is what leads to the formation of tumors.
Exactly. Now, current treatments for GIs, like imatinib, they're designed to block the activity of this overactive KIT protein. They basically cut off the fuel supply for tumor growth.
So they target the root of the problem, so to speak.
Precisely. These drugs, they're called tyrosine kinase inhibitors, or TKIs, and they work by binding to the KIT protein and preventing it from sending those growth signals.
But you mentioned earlier that resistance mutations are a major challenge in treating GWAS. Can you explain how these resistance mutations develop and why they make current treatments less effective?
Sure. So over time, as cancer cells multiply, they can acquire additional mutations. And some of these mutations can actually alter the shape of the KIT protein. Imagine the TKI drug as a key fitting into a lock, the KIT protein. These resistance mutations, they essentially change the shape of the lock, so the key no longer fits properly.
So the drug can no longer bind effectively to the KIT protein, and it becomes less effective at stopping the cancer's growth.
That's right. It's this constant arms race between the cancer and the treatments we use against it.
Which brings us back to IDRx-42 and why it's generating so much excitement. You said it's designed to target both the initial KIT mutations and these resistance mutations. So how does it manage to do that?
Well, while I can't divulge the specifics of IDRx-42's molecular structure, what makes it unique is its ability to bind to a broader range of K protein configurations. Think of it like a master key that can open multiple locks, even those that have been slightly altered.
So even if the cancer develops resistance mutations that change the shape of the KIT protein, IDRx-42 can still bind to it and block its activity.
That's the idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this ability to target both initial and resistance mutations is what gives IDRx-42 the potential to be a game changer, really. It could provide longer-lasting responses and potentially benefit patients who haven't responded to other treatments.
That's incredibly promising. But as with any new drug, there are potential risks and unknowns. So what are some of the key things that researchers are looking at in the clinical trials for IDRx-42?
Well, safety is always a top priority. So researchers are very carefully monitoring patients for any side effects. They're also looking closely at how well IDRx-42 actually works in different patient populations, including those who have already tried other treatments. And of course, they're looking at how long the positive effects of the treatment last.
It's a good reminder that while the early results are encouraging, we need to be cautiously optimistic. There's still a lot more research that needs to be done before we can fully understand the potential benefits and risks of IDRx-42.
Absolutely. But, the development of this drug, it really represents a significant step forward in the treatment of GCIST. It highlights the incredible progress being made in targeted therapies and the potential for developing more precise and effective treatments for even the most challenging cancers.
Speaking of progress, earlier we touched on the booming field of immuno-oncology. It seems like every day there's a new breakthrough in this area. Can you tell us more about what makes this approach so revolutionary?
Yeah, so immuno-oncology, it's like a completely different way of thinking about cancer treatment. Instead of directly attacking the cancer cells with drugs, we're actually harnessing the power of the body's own immune system to fight the cancer.
So it's like boosting the body's natural defenses.
Precisely. You see, our immune system is incredibly powerful. It has this amazing ability to recognize and destroy abnormal cells, including cancer cells.
Mm.
But the problem is that cancer cells are often able to evade detection by the immune system. They can kind of disguise themselves or send signals that actually suppress the immune response.
So it's like the cancer cells are playing hide and seek with the immune system.
That's a good way to put it, yeah. So immuno-oncology therapies, they work by removing those disguises and unleashing the full power of the immune system to attack the cancer.
Okay, can you give us some examples of how these immuno-oncology therapies actually work?
Sure. So one of the most successful types of immuno-oncology therapies is called checkpoint inhibitors. And these drugs, they target specific proteins on immune cells that act like brakes. They prevent the immune system from attacking healthy cells. And cancer cells can actually exploit these checkpoints to suppress the immune response.
So the cancer cells are essentially putting the brakes on the immune system.
Exactly. So checkpoint inhibitors, they work by releasing those brakes and allowing the immune system to recognize the cancer cells as a threat. And then they can mount a full-scale attack.
Wow, that's amazing. It's like taking the handcuffs off the immune system and letting it do what it does best.
It really is. And, we're seeing remarkable results with checkpoint inhibitors in a variety of cancers, including lung cancer, melanoma, and bladder cancer.
What about other types of immuno-oncology therapies? You mentioned CAR T-cell therapy earlier. How does that work?
Right, so CAR T-cell therapy, it's a more personalized approach. It involves taking a patient's own T cells, which are a type of immune cell, and genetically modifying them to recognize and attack specific cancer cells.
Oh, wow. So it's like creating a custom-designed army of immune cells that are specifically trained to target that patient's cancer.
You got it. And then these modified T cells are infused back into the patient, where they can seek out and destroy cancer cells throughout the body.
That sounds incredibly futuristic.
It is. CAR T-cell therapy is still a relatively new approach, but it's already showing remarkable success in treating certain types of blood cancers, like leukemia and lymphoma. So it's a powerful tool that holds great promise for the future of cancer treatment.
It's truly fascinating how researchers are finding new and innovative ways to fight cancer. The development of targeted therapies like IDRx-42 and the emergence of immuno-oncology therapies are clear examples of this progress.
Yet we're seeing a convergence of scientific disciplines, really, with advances in genomics, immunology, and biotechnology all contributing to this progress. It's a very exciting time to be in the field of cancer research.
It certainly is. But amidst all this excitement, I think it's important to remember that these are still early days for many of these therapies. There's still a lot more research that needs to be done to fully understand their potential and to ensure they reach the patients who need them most.
That's a crucial point. The development of new therapies is just one piece of the puzzle. Ensuring equitable access, navigating the complex regulatory landscape, and addressing the financial implications of these treatments are all critical challenges that need to be addressed.
We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive, from the intricacies of GST to the revolutionary potential of immuno-oncology. But let's step back and consider the bigger picture here. What are the broader implications of these advancements for the future of cancer treatment?
Yeah, you're right. There's a lot more to this than just the science. So, we've talked about GSK's move with IDRx and these advancements in immuno-oncology, but where does this all fit in the larger picture of the oncology market? It seems like the competition is really fierce. It is. The oncology market is incredibly dynamic and competitive. There are so many players vying for a share of this multi-billion-dollar industry. We're seeing a real surge in these mergers and acquisitions, like, the GSK IDRx deal. Companies are trying to bolster their pipelines and gain a competitive edge.
You mentioned that there were 18 immuno-oncology deals just in the third quarter of 2024 alone. That was worth almost $3 billion. I mean, that's a staggering amount of investment. So what's driving this intense competition?
Well, there are a few factors fueling this competitive landscape. First, those scientific advancements that we've been talking about are creating, unprecedented opportunities.
Yeah.
We can develop new and potentially even curative therapies, which is obviously very exciting. This is attracting major investment from venture capitalists and large pharmaceutical companies alike. So it's this potential for these groundbreaking therapies that's driving the investment. Exactly. And then there's also this increasing demand for cancer treatments. As the global population ages, and with these changing lifestyles, the incidence of cancer is, unfortunately, on the rise. This creates a large and growing market for effective treatments.
It's like this complex interplay of scientific progress and market forces, and then patient need, obviously. So with all this money pouring into the oncology market, how does that impact drug development and pricing? I mean, is there a concern that these new therapies will be priced out of reach for a lot of patients?
That's a very valid concern. The cost of developing these new cancer drugs is astronomical, often reaching billions of dollars. And pharmaceutical companies, they argue that these high prices are absolutely necessary. They need to recoup those research and development costs, and then they need to fund future innovation.
But how do we balance the need for innovation with the need for affordable treatments? It's a really difficult equation.
It is, and it's a conversation that needs to involve all stakeholders. So, pharmaceutical companies, policymakers, healthcare providers, and patients. There's really no easy solution here. But I think exploring innovative pricing models, increasing transparency around drug development costs, and fostering more competition within the market are all potential avenues to address this challenge.
It sounds like there's a lot at stake here, not just for the companies involved, but for patients and society as a whole.
Absolutely. The advancements that we're seeing in oncology, they hold such tremendous promise. I mean, we can improve and extend lives. But it's crucial that we navigate the ethical and financial complexities of this progress very thoughtfully. We need to ensure that these benefits reach everyone who needs them.
That's a really powerful message to end on. I think, as we wrap up this deep dive into GSK's acquisition of IDRx and this whole evolving landscape of oncology, it's clear that we are on the cusp of a new era in cancer treatment. This convergence of all these scientific breakthroughs and these market forces, and then patient advocacy as well, is creating a really dynamic and complex landscape. I think the challenge and the opportunity lie in harnessing this momentum to create a future where effective cancer treatments are accessible and affordable for all. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.